Hello, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me and or see me. And if you can't, that's a big problem, and we need to solve it as quickly as humanly possible. Looks like some people are starting to flow in here. We've got Danielle. We've got Harlot's Fireflies. I did tell somebody, I think I told you, Damien, that eventually we're going to have like more AI bots in webinars than actual humans, which I think is hilarious. Um, we've got Erica. We've got a couple other people coming in. If you can hear me and or see me, please just give me a yes or a Y down in the chat. Perfect. All right.
Nice.
This is great. We have communication. It is up and running. Damien, we're going to get into something that I think is incredibly exciting, something that we have not released as of, well, we did release it as of a few days ago. It's a brand new feature that I think is going to be revolutionary for the workforce analytics industry. Not to necessarily kind of hype this up, but this is something that I think is the coolest thing that we've ever released inside of Time Doctor, and Time Doctor's been running for 15 plus years. So what do you think about that, Damien?
Yes, I agree. I think it's all well and good if you're looking at, various different metrics, KPIs within your organization, but that's just a silo, right? So like, how do you know how you are compared to other organizations, right? Other companies, other industries, other individual users. So up to now, that's been quite a blind spot, right? Because it's very difficult to determine what success actually looks like. But that's why it's super exciting with Benchmarks AI. We can give you that insight as to when you compare yourself to other companies, industries, users, etc. So it should be very, very insightful, hopefully. And you're all very welcome. I really appreciate you guys joining us here in this webinar. Intro-wise, and a little bit of housekeeping. So as you can see, my name is Damien King, Director of Solutions here at Time Doctor. And I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Liam Martin, co-founder of Time Doctor. And yeah, look, this is what we want to bring you through today. We will have time as well for Q&A. There'll be a couple of polls as well as we go through, but we will have space at the end for Q&A. So if there is something that you have, you don't need to hold it until that, final 15 minutes, pop it in the chat, and then we'll address it at the end, okay? Liam, over to you for the agenda.
Agenda, very simple. We're going to be talking about specifically why we think the traditional productivity metrics are failing the vast majority of people that are implementing them today. Then we're going to show you what high performing teams do differently, specifically in that industry, the metrics that truly matter. And again, we have over 10,000 customers, hundreds of thousands of users. So we know a thing or two about productivity metrics. You're going to be breaking that down. Then we're going to be showing you Benchmarks AI, just a very short view of what it does and what its capabilities are. And then we're going to have some real world application and use cases, some takeaways, and then we're going to be jumping into Q&A. And also, if you stay towards the end, we're going to be offering everyone a really special offer. If you're interested in just trying out Benchmarks AI, you will not need any credit card information to specifically kind of fire this up inside of your organization. Let's go to the next one.
Nice. Yeah, thanks for that, Liam. So, here we go. First poll question. There are, I believe there's 3 polls. So we're not going to bombard you with polls, but it's always good to get a bit of a pulse check or a sense check as to where you are. So first question, how are you currently measuring team productivity? So you should see it pop up on your screen now. Is it hours tracked? Is it task completion? Maybe just through employee surveys, or even just kind of gut feeling from managers, right? Or are you not measuring at all? So we'll leave this poll open for probably another 20 seconds. Go ahead and select what fits best. Also, feel free to add any other metrics, in the comment section if there's something that's not here that you currently measure team productivity with. So,
well, the last one, we're not really measuring it right now, which is, to be completely honest with you, the scariest one. I know that a couple of people have clicked on that. Listen, We're not pointing fingers at anybody here. You start from zero. That's totally cool as well.
Yeah, precisely. Okay, so some interesting results coming through: task, project management, completion, gut feeling, manager perception, and then we're not really measuring it right now. So let me end this poll, and I will share those results.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people measure through gut feel. And that's just one of those things that I wouldn't necessarily say you need to discount, but it's not the only tool that I would use in my toolbox in terms of my full management direction.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. Well, we will move on and we will jump in. Okay. So 60% of executives rely on input-based metrics, right? So this is the measurement gap, right? We're kind of setting the scene here. Okay. So this is really what we're trying to get to is what's happening in the market with outdated metrics. Okay. So this is based on a Deloitte study that revealed that 60% of executives rely on input-based metrics, right? Like hours worked, emails sent, really baseline stuff, like things that are not really going to tell the full story. Okay. But then conversely, on the other side, sorry, conversely, 15% of employees believe that these actually improve efficiency, right? So you've got a huge gap there. So you've got 60% of executives, and then only 15% believe that it's a valuable way to look at things, right? So what that means is, I suppose, despite widespread recognitions of the importance, right, or a significant productivity blind spot persists. Okay, so this gap, it's preventing accurate performance measures or indicators, right? So therefore, that's just going to hinder growth. Okay, huge disconnect existing between executives and employees in terms of the measurement gap. Okay,
Absolutely.
so the illusion, right? These are outdated metrics. Liam, this one's over to you.
Yeah. So, in my opinion, this isn't just a blind spot. This is an illusion, and illusions are much more dangerous than blind spots. So, when you look at traditional productivity metrics, they belong, I think, fundamentally in the past, and no one should be strung up for saying, "Hey, I'm measuring by these old school ways." But in a lot of ways, they give you that false sense of control. So, like hours worked, okay? In my opinion, presence does not equal impact. If Damien is working 20 hours a day, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's producing 3 times the amount of output as someone that's working 8 hours per day. To be honest with you, after a couple of days, Damien probably looks like a zombie because he's working 20 hours per day. Online status, right? Availability is not productivity. Having that little green bubble on your Slack or your Microsoft Teams does not mean that you're actually productive. It just means that you have a green bubble on. We can talk more about that as well later on. More meetings don't mean more progress inside of an organization. A lot of times it actually means less progress inside of organizations. And then manual timesheets, I mean, those are really outdated and unreliable. And just completing tasks, you can have a quantity argument, but I think that overlooks the quality argument. So when you have these metrics, it's going to create that productivity blind spot, limiting your potential in today's remote first and hybrid work environment that we absolutely exist in today. And I think we need to be able to measure something differently. Next slide, Damien.
Yeah. So this is what it costs you as an organization, right? So the organizational impact, right? So the blind spots, they result in misaligned incentives, burnout, difficulty in identifying high and low performers, right? And ineffective resource allocation, right? So when it kind of comes down to it, like when you measure the wrong things, you get the wrong outcomes. Okay. Mm-hmm. So in terms of like a few ways that this would show up, right? So you get potential for false positives. Okay. People rewarded for visibility, not value. Just because they're there and they're present, we often think that, as Liam just mentioned, that's a key indicator for somebody who's very productive or does great work. But just because you're there and you turn on your computer, that's not necessarily a great indicator. Okay. So you can also very easily miss burnout signals, right? So people silently struggling whilst looking busy. Okay. So again, they're there, they're present, right? But this is something that we're going to mention as well on the next slide, that kind of Pareto principle of people shouldering more of the burden on their team, right? How do you try and identify that? It's very, very difficult to do it without having the
Mm.
data to back it up. And we'll go into that in more detail. But, you know, you can see here, leadership becomes reactive. So not strategic, because essentially you're flying blind, right? So it creates inefficiencies, kills morale, prevents real growth, or has the potential to, right? So this is what I mentioned, that classic Pareto principle, right? So a small group of people carrying the weight of the team, right? So we actually have a real world example of this. Okay, so we had there's a global logistics company who came to us, potential client, right? And they had an issue that they suspected. They had no solid data to back it up at the time. The issue was that they believed that there were a small cohort of people, small subset of high performers, that were essentially shouldering the burden of work for everyone else. Okay. And literally, how they came to realize this, the most striking part of it was the fact that they only realized it too late. It was an exit interview from a long term employee who they had no idea was unhappy. They had no way of knowing, they had no data to back this up. So during the exit interview they conducted, they just told the qualitative story. I'm doing all of the work here and I'm sick and tired of it. Okay. So what we did to be able to kind of like assist with that, we ran a trial of Time Doctor. We could see very quickly that those results were remarkable, right? The issue was omnipresent, just not on that one team. It was spread out across their entire, all of the business units within their organization. You're talking about 15 to 20% shouldering the burden of work to the tune of around 70 to 80%. Okay. So obviously, you know, we don't need to explain the full risk of that type of disparity, but it's going to have a huge knock-on effect because your best performers are just going to leave the organization. Okay. So I'm going to actually ask this in the chat. Has anyone experienced this before? You know, some of your key performers or your best performers leaving without you knowing about it, and you only find out about it too late at the exit interview. This is why we're here today. We're talking about these types of, you have, Liam, obviously.
I'm virtually raising my hand, which is, yes, that is unfortunately just one of those things that, I mean, there's always a percentage of team members that outperform the norm. But when you're talking about 10 to 15% of people essentially doing the vast majority of work, you're going to have those people burn out inevitably. Yeah. And you're right. I think that it's probably present in all companies to some degree.
Yeah. Yeah. And this isn't like, it's not just a one-off anecdotal story. Like we see this all the time because, as I said previously, you're flying blind. You have very little indication. So yeah, if you have experienced something like that before, put it in the chat. Please let us know. You don't need to go into too much detail, but just if you have experienced that type of scenario. So Liam, over to you on this one.
Yeah. So when you look at performance decisions, I think that we're fundamentally doing a lot of this stuff in a bubble. And that's really, really problematic. So we have so much content right now in the HR world, but we miss the context. And I think that that's what's really important for everyone to be able to understand right now. So you're collecting data, but you're actually missing the critical context of what the heck is going on. So why is working 8 hours a day the ideal amount? Why not 6? Why not 12? What is the ideal amount? A lot of this, we don't really know. We just say like, oh, well, it's supposed to be 8. Who knows, right? You track hours, you measure tasks. Maybe you even focus on like, you identify focus time, but how do you know how your team is performing well? Most companies don't fundamentally work without a true benchmark. So when you're doing this, number one, you're measuring in isolation. You have data without context. Is just fundamentally noise, in my opinion. You're assuming equal productivity, meaning not everyone actually works at the same level or pace, right? So for me, I'm a very emotional being. Sometimes I need to recharge my batteries. Damien, he's a machine. He can go 14, 15 hours every day and just give me some more, right? I don't know how he does that. There's a lot of other things that are pretty weird about Damien, which we can get into later on in the presentation if you'd like. But those are two differences between the two of us, right? We have to understand that not everyone works the same way, but I might actually get the same amount of output that Damien has throughout a workday, but you don't know. And lastly here, flying blind, right? Without industry comparisons, you have no clue what good actually looks like. inside of your organization. And that's the part that I think is so problematic, and what we can solve today in an AI first era of HR management and workforce analytics. Next one.
Yeah. So, like we kind of had a discussion about this. Like, well, why would you pay attention to us, right? Time Doctor. Like, what would we know about this, right? But here's what our bona fides are, right? So we work with over 250,000 employees across 12,000 businesses, right? Over 12,000, right? So we know a little bit about these types of metrics that we're talking about, right? So when we look at the most successful teams across our customer base, we tend to see consistent patterns. Okay, so they're not just tracking productivity; they're using the data they see in Time Doctor to coach more and to plan more confidently and to continuously improve. It's not just surface level data metrics. Okay, so this is the first one, right? They're looking at how the time is spent. They're not just looking at the time. So what is contained within that time? That's how you really kind of figure out who your highest performers are. Okay, and then they use that data to coach and to calibrate, right? So not to micromanage. This is something that we're always at pains to try and get across, right? So Time Doctor is not to be used in a punitive way. It's to help and enable and to have everyone try and level the playing field, right? You can try and figure out where your bottlenecks are, right? Next one, they make performance measurable and shareable across the organization, right? So again, this is all about transparency and collaboration, okay? You are doing this with your whole organization, and communication and transparency is absolutely key to that. And then lastly, they review productivity trends consistently, not just when there's a problem, okay? So oftentimes you can think of that like if something has happened, again, that's just reactive, right? With what we're going to go through today, especially with benchmarks, you have the opportunity to be able to be proactive, to be able to identify trends that are happening within your organization. For example, the usage of collaboration tools, right? I can't think of how many companies who I've spoken to who are concerned with the amount of time that their users are spending on Slack or Teams, for example, right? Yes, it can be a productive tool, but too much use of it can be unproductive, right? I'm the exact same. I think I'm on Slack pretty much all day, every day. So these are the kind of like more deeper level insights that we're trying to get to using benchmarks AI, because you can figure out whether your collaboration tool usage is normal or if it's above the norm or below the norm. Not just within your organization, outside of your organization. That is the key here. We're trying to look over the fence, not internally. So yeah, it's great, but how do we know that we're doing well? You know, it's great to know what you have internally. So Liam.
Well, let me answer that, Damien.
Yeah.
I think that we fundamentally need to look at teams that consistently outperform others. When we look at those particular organizations, they measure things very differently from teams that don't. And again, we have 12,000 companies, hundreds of thousands of employees, so we know a thing or two about this. They focus on metrics that truly reflect productivity and not just busy work. And it's important to be able to divide the two from each other. So first, they track time and behavior metrics. Total hours alone don't actually tell you much about how teams spend those hours. So great teams analyze the breakdown of productive versus unproductive time. And that's to ensure focus on meaningful tasks. They also track productivity and active time closely. So like how much time do you actually spend doing work, i.e. being in a focus state, and how much time do you just spend flipping between Slack channels and not necessarily getting anything done? Maybe that's Damien, maybe that isn't Damien. Who knows? We can talk about Damien. We can talk about that with Damien later on in the comments. We also see that they pay close attention to unusual activity, spotting issues early to actually stay ahead. So what are those indicators that really that flow state is starting to drop off? They pay attention to that quite a bit. Secondly, they dive into deep tool usage metrics. So top teams know exactly how they're leveraging technology, breaking down usage patterns app by app, They track adoption of AI tools. I know that we're doing that inside of our company, and we can get into that in a deeper way as well. Collaboration platforms, task management software, really identifying exactly where tech adds value inside of an organization and where it doesn't. And then this clarity ensures they continuously optimize tool use for better outcomes. So by measuring these deeper insights, not just surface level metrics, high performing teams gain a true competitive advantage, at least in my opinion, in the research that we've seen. So they don't just track productivity, they actually drive productivity inside of their organizations.
Yeah. So
Next slide.
this one, yeah, our use cases. Okay, so this one's really specific. Let me give you kind of like a real world example here. This isn't just like anecdotal. Okay, so we worked with a sales org that was focused on the wrong things, essentially. Okay, so they were focused on call volume, but like most sales orgs, they try and figure out one problem, and then if it doesn't work, then they just move to the next thing and the next thing, right? So call volume, but it wasn't moving the needle. It wasn't changing anything, right? So then they shifted their focus to deal conversion, okay? And they paired that with better insights into how reps were spending their time, okay? So what they did was, by aligning coaching to real work behavior and not just to pure activity, they boosted revenue by 15% in 1 quarter, right? So they use the data to make an informed decision to be able to change their tactics, okay? So the seismic shift had a positive impact on the team because they were, not daunted, right? If you imagine this as a sales team, you start your day, if your KPI, your metric is just sheer call volume, eventually that's going to become exhausting, right? Literally just a number. So for them, they weren't daunted by like hitting that kind of pretty much arbitrary number every day, the volume numbers. They could focus on working better. Okay. So that was it. That was the power of intelligent benchmarking. Okay. So better focus, better results. Okay. So we're going to do another quick poll. And before we kind of jump into the specifics of our benchmark AI, right? So what's your biggest productivity challenge right now? Okay. Is it meetings, lack of visibility, manual reporting, or as you can see, just not knowing what good looks like? Again, take a few seconds, let us know. Anything that's not included here, I know I say this every time, but please add it in the comments as well. Okay, what have we got? 4-4. It's pretty even
That's
split.
starting a big debate right now. Looks like someone's pulling away.
Low visibility into what's really getting done. Too many meetings or distractions. I know that feeling. That one is, pretty prevalent. Unclear performance metrics, What are we talking here? Low visibility? Okay, we'll end this one, shall we?
Yeah.
Okay. So let me share these results. Low visibility into what's really getting done.
Yeah.
In the top spot. Too many
Interesting.
meetings. I'm not really surprised, but like too many meetings or distractions. That's, for me, that's a key one. Interesting though. Okay, cool.
I think the low visibility into what's really getting done is an interesting one, because it sounds like we're probably dealing with a lot of people that are managing a lot of people, or they're executives, they're VPs, they're maybe even C-level people that are really just trying to figure out, okay, what the heck is going on, right?
Yeah.
Like, because all of our top end numbers are working, but then when you break down into those smaller and smaller pieces, you can sometimes find a lot of failure points. But if you don't have the metrics to be able to measure it, you can't do it.
Yeah, for sure. Good call out. Okay. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. Let me move on to our next. And Liam, this is over to you.
Yeah. So to everyone that's listening right now, we've talked about outdated metrics and how they leave some teams fundamentally guessing. We just addressed that. But here's the cool part. I think we've built something totally new here, and we're calling it Benchmarks AI. And I genuinely think this is the future of measuring productivity. I'm going to get on my own personal soapbox specifically to be able to talk about this because I think it's a complete game changer. So here's how it works. First, Benchmarks AI matches your team's behavior with similar teams using advanced AI. So you'll instantly know how you're doing compared to everyone else. So there's no more guessing, right? So I can compare specifically what Damien is doing in conjunction with all of his coworkers, and I know what I'm doing in comparison to all of my coworkers. And then it actually gives you clear percentile ranks for things that actually matter. So like focus, collaboration, how effectively you're using tools. And you're quickly going to see if you're really doing a great job inside of the organization or if there's room to be able to improve productivity. And best of all, this is updated weekly. So you're never flying blind. You always have fresh, actionable insights specifically to be able to benchmark yourself, your team, or your organization across the anonymized network inside of Time Doctor. And that's the part that I think is the coolest thing that you can't get anywhere else is you as an individual, you exist inside of your vacuum and you say to yourself, yeah, I think we're doing pretty well. We're spending this much time on our CRM per week as an example. But you don't actually know what other salespeople are spending on their CRM or their Slack or their Microsoft Teams deployment. Now, with the power of all of the anonymized users inside of Time Doctor, you can specifically identify that benchmark. And this is really, to me, the first time that you're going to be able to stop guessing and finally know exactly how your team is performing specifically. And it's really, really cool. Again, I'm not saying that because I'm co-founder of the company. I just think it's really cool. And I've been using it nonstop the last few months, more than any other report inside of Time Doctor.
Yeah. And just to add to that one as well, or maybe to echo what you've already said, Liam, anonymized aggregated data, right? So that's kind of crucial. And I think if you give us a little bit of a history lesson, Liam, because like sometimes you get questions like, okay, well, if I'm a logistics company, am I comparing myself to, 7 different logistics companies, right? And maybe the first iteration of this was probably the case where it was like industry comparison or something like that. But with the advancement of AI, especially even over the last 6 months, like we know that that's not an accurate comparison, right? Because people behave in different ways, right? So there's no point in just comparing yourself with another logistics company if you're comparing with how other people operate within their day-to-day that's similar to you. That's going to leave you with a much better productivity metrics or benchmark data, correct?
Yeah. And the other thing is, number one, those logistics companies are never going to give you that data. So that's the advantage of using Time Doctor is you're going to be able to get access to that anonymized data that really provides you more value. So the more users that we have throughout our network, the more value you get as an individual customer to be able to benchmark yourself against anyone else. But then also secondarily, you're right, it's not the industry that's the most important thing. It is the actual profession. So we have over 11,000 different professions that our AI has identified that we'll be able to slot you into. So you, as an individual worker inside of Time Doctor, we will know what your role is without you even telling us. And then we can benchmark you specifically against that particular industry. And the funny thing as well, not to necessarily get into the weeds too much here, but no one has a perfect role. No one is a perfect marketer. No one is a perfect customer service agent. They're actually all a little bit different. And that's one of the things that we discovered through working on this feature the last 6+ months is that AI actually defines specific roles in very, very specific ways. So whatever you do, we will actually be able to find a benchmark for you and for your industry.
Nice. Yeah, makes sense. Liam, this one is over to you again.
Yeah. So again, we're beyond statistics and reporting. I think that is like an old way of looking at things. Historically, benchmarking relied on static reports. Probably a lot of you know Net Promoter Score, which is a really good benchmark. But that actually is, number one, very expensive. It's generic. It's an industry average. But today you can automatically get up-to-date, dynamic, synchronous information literally in your dashboard. Second, live relevant comparisons is what I talked about before. So the modern need is for live comparisons to similar roles in similar companies for actionable insights. And that's the part that for me is so important for you to understand, because at the speed of business today, you really need to be able to optimize for that as quickly as possible. I mean, 6 months ago, we probably wouldn't have been in the same state with regards to AI that we currently are in today. So industry can change very, very quickly and is moving faster. And lastly, coaching, right? 90% of your workday might be fantastic. You don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater or the baby with the workday, in my opinion. And you want to focus on the 10% of the workday that actually needs help, not the 90% that's perfect. And that's where that calibration really works in here. Is it's not a competition between workers. It is every unique individual having a unique success and coaching plan.
Excellent. Okay, this is our final poll. Final poll for the day. Yeah, if you could benchmark your team, sorry, maybe it's the penultimate poll. If you could benchmark your team against similar companies, what would you want to compare? Right, time spent versus outcomes, tool usage like AI and CRMs or collaboration tools, productivity across internal teams, or something else. Drop it in the chat as well if we don't cover it within those poll questions. So here we go.
Yep, starting to get results in. I think that this one is also very, very interesting, just to kind of see how people
Yes,
perspectives on this.
I like this. How we compare to similar teams at other companies. That's kind of broad. That's kind of hitting all the below, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Use of key tools like AI, CRM, project management. Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll give it another 5
Say,
seconds.
let's call it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
There we go. There's the results. Kind of clear winner. How we compare to similar teams at other companies. Okay.
So this was not like a legitimate poll question. This was exactly what benchmarking AI does. So we do all of those things except for the something else, which was not shared in the chat. So we do all of those things with benchmarking AI, which I think is incredibly exciting for people because it looks like everyone has those problems.
Correct. Okay. So what benchmarks AI makes possible? Okay. So context that guides action. Okay. So know where your people stand and compare to others that work like them so that they have similar work patterns or behavior. So no more flying blind. We've kind of mentioned that a few times, flying blind, but it's crucial because you need to figure out what it is or how your team work in comparison to those that are not within your organization. That's essentially what we're getting to here. Clarity for better decisions. Okay. So what you can do is you can very quickly spot trends, right? Who needs support? Who is leading? Where you need to focus next? Where you need to focus your attention? Okay. That's what you're going to get. You're going to get a lot deeper insight from benchmarks. Built-in intelligence without a heavy lift. Okay. So benchmarks AI runs in the background. No tagging, no role mapping, as Liam has already suggested. The power of AI is here, and it can determine and detect what your role is. As Liam mentioned, I think, what did you say? Over 11,000 job roles that we have mapped. So yeah, staggering amount. So no process changes required to start getting insights. The time to value is really, really quick. So that being said, I am going to do a very quick demo. I'm going to keep it very brief, less than 5 minutes, just to show you, give you I'm a very literal person, so I just want to show you what this looks like. And just bear with me. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I will then start sharing again. Okay, share. Hopefully this one works. Let's see. Okay. Okay. Hopefully you can see that. Yes?
I can see your screen.
Okay,
I
excellent.
think if I can, everyone else can.
Brilliant. I will keep this brief. Okay, Time Doctor's benchmarks takes your productivity data and it very simply takes your productivity data internally and it compares to others. So it's taking internal metrics that we already do, that's our bread and butter, and it's comparing them to outside organizations and users and people behaviors. Okay. So let's explore real quick. So select reports. Okay. Benchmarks. And this is it, right? So see where you stand across key productivity metrics, right? So what we do is we kind of band them, right? So you got your top 25%. This is your top percentiles. You've got your middle 50 and your bottom 25. So you can easily spot patterns or gaps that are worth addressing, right? You can also, you can very quickly determine whether you want this for all users within your organization or if you want to select specific users or teams or groups or whatever. So, you could do this and you could do total hours percentile and you could put in sales, marketing, CS, and solutions. And you can compare all of those, okay? So compare performance of team, user team, company level, total hours worked, total tracked, etc. Right? Then your productive time percentile, right? So time spent on websites and applications that are categorized by your organization. Again, this is either based on everyone or specific users, right? So by matching it to the AI, you're going to see that whatever the selected users that you have, they are matched up against similar users aggregated throughout the entirety of Time Doctor. So you're going to get a much more accurate comparison than just looking internally within your own org. Okay. So active versus passive time. Okay. How much time is spent actively using your keyboard or mouse versus time spent passively, right? So reading or on calls. Okay. Another great way because, we often think that like somebody who has a very low percentage of idle time, meaning that they're always active on their device, the old presumption would have been that they are, hugely productive, right? That's not always the case. Okay, people ingest information, they operate in different ways. So you need to compare them fairly. This is an apples for apples comparison. This is what we're going to look at. I think Liam as well, you mentioned like not just apples for apples, but it's like red apples for red apples, green apples for green apples, Brayburns with Brayburns. There's no point in comparing Granny Smith to a pink lady. It's like comparing
Right.
to the right apples.
Or as the regular one goes, the apples to oranges analogy, right? It's just like, it's one of those things that you want to be able to make sure that you're specifically, we don't just deal with apples to oranges. We specifically figure out what type of worker are you? What's your job role? As I talked about before, even just in terms of marketing, there are many, many, many different types of marketing positions that our AI has actually identified. So we don't just say like a job role is a marketer. There are, and again, I would have to check this, dozens, if not hundreds of different marketing roles inside of the category of marketing that our AI automatically identifies for people and compares and amalgamates together, which is the real reason why this is a bit of a game changer.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's no point in looking at the generic. We might as well, you need to look at the specific to gain the true value of it. So yeah, things like idle time, unusual activity. This is going to flag extended periods of inactivity or behaviors that may indicate some sort of irregular or inconsistent work patterns. Okay, this one to me is really kind of crucial, and it's one that we've talked about already. So time spent on collaboration tools, right? So collaboration AI and task completion tools, right? So things like Asana and Jira, or AI platforms that we're all pretty used to, like LLMs, like ChatGPT or Claude or whatever it might be, and then communication tools. Again, we all know those, right? So Slack, MS Teams, etc. So the use case that we often encounter is like when I'm speaking to someone, they say, I think my team is using Slack too much. I think that they are spending too much time in Zoom meetings. Okay. And you might think that, but how do you really know? How do you really know what's too much? Unless you can really truly understand what other people who do the same function or the very similar role, what they do in other organizations. By utilizing benchmarks AI, you very quickly could potentially determine that you're just normal, that you're within the normal parameters of that usage. So that can be reassuring in that sense. That it's like, okay, cool, we're within the 50 percentile. So there's, we're not in the top 90 or 90 percentile of users of collaboration tools, or things like Zoom or Teams or whatever. So it's reassuring for you as an organization to know that you are within those normal parameters. Okay. So yeah, personalize your analysis. So this is what you do. Like everything else in Time Doctor, you're going to select the users that you want to target for benchmarks. Then you're going to select the time parameters. So you can check out certain weeks. Then you can extrapolate that over longer, over 60 days, for example. Users, teams, individuals, etc. And then what you can do is you can, as I mentioned, you can really hone into particular user level benchmarks. Okay. So in this instance, we're looking at developers, marketing, and finance to figure out what their total hours percentiles are. And this is running from the end of April up to kind of mid-June. So you'll see, and it'll tell you, it'll plot it all out on the lines, which ones. So you kind of figure out work habits, right? So in this particular example, you're comparing teams with similar tools, work habits. You can see the finance team in the pink line logging more hours than their behavioral peers, right? That could be, again, we're talking about looking at the data and then making business decisions potentially based on that, right? So that could be an early sign of burnout or a signal to dig deeper, right? Really insightful information, okay? And then you can dive deeper into user level benchmarks, okay? So it's not just the kind of the macro level graphs, right? So the detailed view is going to show you those aggregated values for each selected user and what percentile they fall into, right? So here you can see everyone listed, total time tracked, average, percentile, whether they're very high, etc., right? So you can go into a lot more granular detail, okay? So essentially, it's going to tell you what good looks like, not just from within your organization, but from outside as well. Liam, anything closing on that before I jump back into the demo?
So I have been using this personally for myself to just literally measure how I stack up in comparison to everyone else that exists inside of the organization. And everyone that exists inside of my job type, which has been really cool and insightful for me to be able to truly understand how much do I use AI. I think I use AI a lot, but you know what Benchmarks tells me? Benchmark tells me that I'm in the 79th percentile of my job type. So I use AI almost more than anyone else inside of the organization. But for someone that is essentially a marketing executive that is also the co-founder of the company and really focuses on innovation, I'm actually only in the 79th percentile. So I actually need to use AI more to be in the top performing quartile of an organization. So it's really cool to be able to see that data and how it interrelates.
Okay. Yes. Excellent. Let me just jump in here now. I'll go back to the. Hopefully you can see my.
Screen. Yep, can see it. See your screen.
Okay. Perfect.
So just to kind of pull this back.
Yeah.
To really kind of give everyone the 30-second pitch here. Benchmarking is really important when you do it with the right peers. Okay. So it's not about guiding. It's about guiding, not grading. So you don't want to be able to settle for generic industry averages. As I said, things like MPS, EMPS, they don't necessarily work. Most actionable insights come from comparing your team to others with similar work patterns and tool usage, not just shared job titles, which is what I talked about before. Next, you need to focus on trends, not snapshots. So a single data point can actually mislead you quite a bit. Oh, we're using AI in the 98th percentile one week, but we might be the 4th percentile the next week. You need to be able to figure out what's going on longitudinally. So real performance stories emerge over time. You need to track patterns, not just week over week, but you need to be able to surface them over months to really figure out where things are going and whether or not you're improving or things are fundamentally stable. And then lastly, you need to use benchmarks to actually get connected with the right peers. So benchmarks aren't about judgment, they're about direction. And whether you're above or below average, the goal is to uncover actionable insights that fuel smarter decisions that focus on real coaching inside of your organization. But that's just my opinion. What do you think, Damien?
Yes. No, I agree. I agree. I think for me, like those key takeaways that you just went through, I think for me, it's always been tough when we talk about Time Doctor to organizations because like everyone wants to know what's happening over the fence, right? Everyone's curious as to what other people are doing, what makes them successful. I can't think of how many conversations I've had with prospects and clients talking about, well, how do I know what good is? Right? That always comes up in conversation. So having something legitimate with the power of AI to be able to give those insights to me is an absolute game changer. Okay. And I think it's just going to add a huge amount of value, and just take those decisions that you make outside of the silo of your own organization and to really figure out what that looks like externally. So for me, yeah, it's absolutely huge.
And I
So
would just add one more thing, Damien, which is this is the first time that that's ever been possible.
yeah,
Ever. This is the first, like, no one else has this in the world. And as I said before, if you wanted to actually build this inside of your own organization, it wouldn't work because you're only inside of the bubble of your own organization. It's the power of our anonymized network that really empowers this to be able to truly understand where you fit in comparison to everybody else. And I can't tell you, I mean, how many conversations I've had, probably hundreds of calls with customers where they said, well, what does that mean?
yeah,
How much time should people be spending on Slack? It depends on your role, depends on your organization, depends on your industry. And for the first time ever, you can actually get access to that data, which I'm so excited about showing
mhm,
off to everybody.
yeah. Okay. I think I told a lie about the polls. So this is our truly our last poll. Would you like to learn more about Benchmarks AI? So yes, I'm interested. I hope everyone will be interested. Please contact me or not interested at this time.
And the other
Okay.
thing too that we wanted to be able to add in here is for the first time ever, we're also going to be able to, on this brand new feature that's completely coming out and is never going to, this first new feature that's going to be coming out or that has come out, we're going to be offering everybody a extension of a trial because we've recognized that you need to actually get a couple data points to really truly get the value of what benchmarking AI does. So instead of just a 14-day trial for everyone that is interested today, you can get a full month trial. You can get 4 weeks of access to this data. You can deploy it inside of your organization and then really truly figure out the benchmark for everyone inside of your company. And then at that point afterwards, if you're interested in continuing on, you're absolutely cool with that. But even just getting a 4-week access to this data will be able to give you such important insight into where your business currently is now and where it stacks up in comparison to everybody else's.
Mhm. Yeah. Nice. Okay. Let me end this poll.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. Looks like we've definitely got some.
most people are interested, which is great. So
So
let's go on to the
yeah.
Q&A. We have a question here from Lisa. And Lisa is asking, what if you are a small startup and managing remote employees? Is this worth it? What do you think, Damien? I have my opinion, but let's have you go first.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think the size of your company, the industry you're in, uh, those are the variables. I don't think that matters. I think what matters is how you work, right? So you mentioned Liza or Lisa that it is remote, even though it's a startup, it's remote, right? So those people are going to operate, they're going to work in a very specific way, okay? But because of the aggregated anonymized data that we have that you can compare to, I still think that there are going to be some really, really insightful, relevant data points that we can look at. So to me, the setup, as in startup, fully remote, that doesn't matter because it's kind
Yeah.
of agnostic it's kind of agnostic, the data. It doesn't really matter what you are in terms of industry or company size. But yeah, over to the
My
expert.
hot take on this is I would actually use this only for myself. Like if you're interested, if you're checking this out right now and thinking to yourself, okay, I'm going to deploy this for the organization. Absolutely. This is a fantastic tool to use for your organization, but you can use it for a company of one. You can deploy it right now, and within a week, it will identify what your job role is without you telling Benchmark AI what your job role is. And then you can specifically see, how often am I working on collaboration tools? What's my productive versus unproductive use of my time? I'm really interested in figuring out how to adopt AI. Where do I fit in my particular job role? So it's scalable from an organization of one to an organization of 100,000. And that's the cool thing about this feature is for us that we didn't focus on the industry, we focused on the individual. However, when you aggregate and you have 500 employees inside of your organization, then you actually can start to compare industries, which is really cool as well. So I hope that that answered your question, Lisa.
Yeah, your
Lisa.
answer was way better. Okay, yeah, and you only did that on purpose to pass to me so that you could then answer because your answer was way better.
Sorry, sometimes I throw you under the bus, Damien. I apologize.
That's quite all right. Any other questions in the chat?
While we're waiting for that, Damien, I don't know if you've been using this on your own, but do you have any kind of individual use cases? Because I know for me, I have been using this almost exclusively of almost any other report inside of Time Doctor to measure my own productivity and to really try to measure where I fit in comparison to everybody else. So I've been, as I talked about before, with regards to AI, I'm in the 79th percentile of my job type, but I spend about 20% of my day using AI. And then there are people inside of our organization that use AI like 2 to 3% of their workday, but they're in the 99th percentile of their job type. So it's really cool and interesting to be able to see the differences between those job types.
Well, let me tell you, right? So obviously, director of solutions. Okay, so the solutions team, believe it or not, Liam, are within their job role or title are the most prolific AI users within the entire Time Doctor organization, right? And this is really, really important when you know we're obviously making a huge drive and there's a lot of initiative towards AI at the moment, right? So that's been a company decision that we've made. So when you're looking for, let's say, for example, AI champions or people within the organization who are going to try and drive the utility and the usage of AI, this is absolutely perfect for identifying that, right? So you can very clearly see the solutions team, they embrace AI, they use it on a daily basis. They're in the top 100 percentile of their role in comparison to AI matched user profiles. So you could very quickly identify, hey, I'm looking for a couple of champions. Let's look at the solutions team first to be our internal AI champions. So that's a real specific use case that we had.
Yeah, so cool. Okay, well, if there's no more questions, I want to thank everyone for attending, using up their valuable time to be able to share this opportunity with us or with you. If anyone has any questions, you can reach out to us all the time, support@timedoctor.com. Go to timedoctor.com. You can sign up. Again, if you're interested in signing up directly, the people that have said yes, we will be reaching out to you personally to be able to set up your extended trial of Time Doctor, specifically with benchmarking AI inside of it, which we're very excited about. And we'd love your feedback. Again, this is a brand new feature that we're just rolling out. So if there's any particular features that you want to be able to add, please let us know because we're actively iterating on this right now.
Great. Well, thank you all. And really appreciate you all attending.
See y'all later. Bye.
Bye-bye.